This is a very strange village, where anything red is not allowed to appear. They don't even allow red flowers to appear, and once they see one, they will remove it and then bury it. The village is surrounded by forest, and the village has always had a legend that a group of human-eating monsters lives in the forest. The monsters like the color red, but are afraid of yellow. Many years ago, the ancestors of the villagers and the monsters had a deal that as long as the villagers don't enter the forest, the monsters will not hurt them. But what the villagers don't know is that the deal was broken. At night, the night watchman on the watchtower hears something strange. He thinks it is his colleague coming to change shifts, but instead he sees a red monster entering the village. The night watchman is terrified, he hurriedly rings the alarm bell, and the villagers who hear the alarm are desperately running to their houses. Lucius is a good man, he helps the children and women to close the doors and windows, but this puts him in danger. On the other side, Lucius' girlfriend Ivy opens the door and stands in the middle, where she anxiously waiting for Lucius to come home. She is blind, so she holds out her hand, waiting for Lucius to take it, but what comes toward her is a monster. The red monster is getting closer and closer to her, and Ivy is trembling with fear. Just as the monster is about to catch her, Lucius comes back. Lucius immediately closes the door, and then takes Ivy to hide in the basement. Everyone is hiding in the basement with fear, praying that the monster won't find them. The next morning, the monster is gone, but every house is left with a red mark by the monster. The elders of the village call an emergency meeting to discuss how to deal with the monsters. That's when Lucius confesses to everyone, admitting that he broke the deal between the village and the monster, causing the monster to enter the village. It turns out that Lucius saw his friend Noah holding some red berries yesterday. Noah is an intellectually disabled man, he couldn't explain where the berries came from. But according to the marks Noah made on the stone, his berries were picked in the forest, and he had entered the forest dozens of times. However, Noah was able to return safely every time, which made Lucius shocked. Lucius also wanted to go into the forest, he wanted to go through the forest to the town to buy medicine, some patients in the village urgently need medicine. Entering the forest, Lucius saw no sign of any monsters. Soon he saw the red berries. Suddenly, something flashed in the woods. Lucius knew that the monster had discovered him, which meant that he had broken the deal between the village and the monster. Lucius was very scared, he pretended that he didn't see anything then returned to the village. But why did Noah enter the forest all the time and never be discovered by the monsters? Now, the villagers can only pray that the monsters don't come back, and they even sacrifice a pig to the monsters. One night, a party is being held in the village. Suddenly, everyone hears screams, and they know it's the monster coming back. Coming out of the house, the villagers find that many sheep have been killed and even skinned. This makes the village chief feel very anxious because he is hiding a huge secret. A few days later, Lucius proposes to Ivy, and Ivy gladly accepts. Noah is very sad when he hears about it, he comes to Lucius' house, and stabs Lucius in the belly when he is not paying attention. It turns out that the three grew up together, Noah and Lucius are both in love with Ivy, and Noah thinks that the only way to get Ivy back is to kill Lucius. When Lucius is found by Ivy, he is only one step away from death. To save Lucius, Ivy wants to go through the forest to the town for medicine. Her chief father doesn't want her to become a widow, so he agrees. But before Ivy sets off, her father takes her to an old shed, where he is going to show her a secret he has been hiding all his life. Entering the shed, he asks Ivy not to scream. With her father's help, Ivy reaches out her hand. Ivy touches the thing in front of her, and she realizes that it is the claws of a monster, she is terrified. Then her father tells her everything. It turns out that the elders of the village are a group of people who are completely disappointed with the outside world, and they have all lost their loved ones for one reason or another. So they came here many years ago and built this utopian village. To keep the younger generation from going out, they made up the legend of the monsters. And the so-called monsters are actually the elders who put on these red costumes. The chief wants Ivy to keep the secret. At the same time, he tells Ivy that there is indeed a legend of a forest monster, and he does not know if it is true or not. For her safety, the chief arranges two young men to protect her to buy medicine. But just an hour into the forest, the two young men escape because they are too scared. Ivy has to continue the journey alone, and suddenly she falls into a big hole. Fortunately, she grabs a tree root and then slowly climbs out. She checks herself, and she realizes that there is a lot of mud on her. She is horrified because she knows that the mud has covered up her yellow coat. Remember, the monsters like the color red and are afraid of yellow. Just then, she hears a terrible voice from behind her, and she desperately runs away. Due to her blindness, she couldn't run very far. When she stops to take a break, she is unaware that she happens to be standing in the middle of a lot of red berries. Suddenly, a monster charges against her. Ivy is smart, she leads the monster to the previous big hole. She stands on the edge of the hole, when the monster charges again she dodges, while the monster falls into the hole and is pierced. And the monster turns out to be Noah, he was trying to drive Ivy back to the village. Ivy continues on her way, and finally, she comes to a wall. She climbs over the wall and happens to meet a policeman who is on patrol. With the help of the policeman, Ivy gets the medicine. Then she returns to the village alone and successfully saves Lucius. Later, the elders tell the villagers that Noah's death was caused by a monster attack. And Ivy promises the elders to continue to keep the secret. In this way, the terrible legend of the monsters will continue in the village. I am Movie Ape, thanks for watching.